My son and his wife left that morning on a trip for their anniversary. Around noon, my daughter-in-law called me, a total wreck, screaming that my son was in the emergency room in critical condition. I did not hesitate for a single second. I grabbed the backpack sitting on the table and ran out the door. Halfway there, I got thirsty. I pulled over to look for a bottle of water in the bag, and that was when I saw it. There was something strange inside, a device that made no sense being there. Instead of getting back on the highway, I turned toward the nearest police station with the bag in my hands, never imagining that detour was going to save my life. The officer looked at the device, then looked at me. With a forced calm that did not reach his eyes, he told me to take a deep breath because that thing was extremely dangerous. He said it was a miracle I was standing there to hear him, instead of being blown to pieces on the interstate. Before I tell you exactly what that device was, why it was in my car, and how I discovered my own son wanted to wipe me off the map for millions of dollars, I want you to do something for me. Tell me where you are right now and what time it is while you are listening to this story. Write it down in the comments, because I need to know where you are hearing me from and who these words are reaching. What I am about to tell you, it is not fiction or some made-up script for a video. This happened on a Saturday morning, the 16th of December, in a quiet house on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. The silence there had become too heavy after living alone for so long and blindly trusting the wrong people. That Saturday, my house was in a deceptive calm. Outside, a thin layer of frost covered the driveway and the car. The grass shimmered with tiny ice crystals, and every time the wind blew, the dry leaves scraped the ground like someone walking unseen. Inside, the wall clock kept a steady tick-tock, the kind of sound you only hear when you have spent years living by yourself. I was making coffee in the kitchen, checking the news on my tablet, and thinking my only plan for the day was to hit the hardware store to buy some new hinges for a cabinet I had been promising myself to fix for months. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that suggested that just a few hours later, I would be watching the car I was supposed to die in go up in flames. It was 10:30 when the phone rang. It was not an odd time for a call, but there was something about the ring, a sharp urgency, like it was ringing louder than usual. Sometimes you sense disaster before it arrives, even if you cannot explain why. I left the cup halfway to my mouth, wiped my hands on my pants, and answered on the second ring. "Hello," I said, my voice still raspy from the morning. On the other end, I heard Brianna, my daughter-in-law, her voice broken by sobs. It was not a controlled cry. It was one of those hysterical screams that pierce your eardrums. "Brianna," I asked, feeling my heart shrink. "What is wrong? Where is Julian?" "Pops, it is Julian," she stammered, through tears, almost choking. "There was an accident. A crash on the highway. He is at the medical center in Atlanta. They are saying he is critical. You have to come now. Please, please, come now." The world tilted under my feet. My hands shook. The cup hit the counter, and the coffee overflowed onto the granite, forming a dark puddle that slid to the floor. I did not understand anything. I only heard her crying, and the word critical bouncing around inside my head like a hammer. "What happened?" I insisted, feeling a sharp stinging in my chest, a pain rising toward my neck. "Tell me exactly what happened." "I do not know," she cried even louder. We were coming back from breakfast. We were happy. And another car. I do not know. Pops. It was all so fast. He cut us off. Julian lost control. He is unconscious. They are running tests. The doctors say they do not know if he will make it to the end of the day. You have to come, please. Come now. I was 62 years old, and yet my heart had not learned how to manage fear. At that age, you have been to many funerals. You have seen friends, neighbors, even your own wife pass away. But a son, you are never prepared to lose a son. Suddenly, I saw Julian again at 16. His shaking hands on the steering wheel of my old sedan the first time I let him drive. I had put my hand on his shoulder and said, "I trust you, son." He smiled, terrified and brave at the same time. That memory was now overlapping with the image of my boy on a gurney full of tubes, several hours away, maybe not breathing, maybe dying. "Hurry, please," Brianna sobbed on the other side. "Come now. I do not know how much time we have." The call cut off abruptly, as if someone had ripped the phone cord from the wall. I stood there for a few seconds staring at the screen, the beep of the dead tone filling the kitchen. I did not think. I just moved. My body reacted before my head did. I ran up to my room, my knees protesting with every step. On the chair by the window was the backpack Brianna had left ready the evening before when she and Julian stopped by for coffee. "For when you finally decide to come to the coast with us, Pops," she had said, laughing. "This way, you already have a bag packed." It seemed like a sweet gesture, one of those things daughters-in-law do to stay on your good side. I did not check the contents at the time. I just thanked her and left it there. Now I grabbed it without a second thought. I unzipped it just enough to throw in a change of clothes, a pair of socks, my phone charger, and a sweater in case the hospital was cold. The bag felt heavier than I remembered, like it already had half the world inside, but I did not pay it any mind. It was not the time to question anything. I headed down the stairs, heart thumping in my chest. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and coat, then crossed the garage to my blue sedan, a car I had bought 3 years ago after selling the logistics company that had consumed half my life. That car was, in a way, the symbol of my retirement. Comfortable, safe, paid for in cash, no debts. I opened it, tossed the backpack onto the passenger seat, sat behind the wheel, and started the engine. I pulled out without waiting for it to warm up, tires crunching over the frost, as I hit the empty street toward the interstate. It was a route I knew by heart. My hands gripped the wheel, and my mind was racing faster than the speedometer. "Hang on, Julian. I am coming. Just hang on." I repeated over and over, almost in a whisper, as if I could send my words to him through the asphalt. I did not look at the backpack. I did not question why it was so perfectly prepared, as if someone knew I would need it that day. I just drove. That road, which I had traveled so many times to visit clients when the business was at its peak, was destined to be, according to someone else's plan, my final journey. After an hour, I was still eating up the miles. The highway stretched out, nearly deserted in front of me, an endless gray ribbon with a few trucks in the distance. There was no traffic, nothing to distract me except the hum of the engine and a coldness that had nothing to do with December, but with fear. My chest felt heavy, my hands were going numb on the wheel, and every time I thought of my son on a gurney, my stomach turned into a hard knot. I pushed the gas, 65, 75, 80 miles per hour. That was when I started noticing something weird about the car. It felt like I was dragging extra weight, an invisible load I could not see but could feel in every vibration. Plus, a dull sensation was coming up through the steering column, something different from the normal feel of the road. A deep, steady hum, barely audible, but persistent, as if the car had someone else's heart beating under my feet. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe the alignment, maybe the tires were worn, maybe the pavement was bad. Do not get paranoid now, I told myself. But the discomfort would not go away, and with every mile, it became clearer. Meanwhile, my mouth went dry. My tongue was sticking to the roof of my mouth, and my head was pounding. I needed water. I remembered Brianna saying she put some bottles in the backpack, that she had thought of everything. I even put your favorite cookies in there, she had told me with a smile. A few minutes later, I saw the green sign. Rest area, 2 miles. I took the exit almost immediately, feeling my heart pounding in my throat, not knowing if it was out of worry for my son or that feeling that something about all this did not quite fit. The service area was nearly empty, a desolate place in the middle of nowhere. A couple of semi-trucks were parked in the back. There were vending machines, public restrooms, and the wind cutting through the air over the concrete, whistling between the light poles. I parked in a secluded spot, turned off the engine, and leaned toward the backpack on the passenger seat. I could hear my own breathing, faster than normal. I opened the main compartment, pushing the clothes aside to look for the water bottle Brianna had mentioned. I felt a folded shirt, the socks, the sweater. That was when I saw it. Tucked between the fabric, wedged in like someone had placed it with wear share, was an object I did not recognize. It was a black box about the size of a paperback book, metallic, heavy, with thin wires running along the edges, and a small LED light on one side blinking calmly. Dull red, dull red. The sight was not accidental. It was an object that had no business being in the life of a retired man on his way to the hospital to see his son. I froze, my hand hovering over the bag. "What on earth is this?" I muttered, not realizing I was saying it out loud. I pulled it out carefully, as if any sudden move would wake it up. The device was cold to the touch, but that red light pulsed like a sick heart. Brianna had prepared that bag, or maybe Julian. On one side, I saw a tiny switch, so discreet it almost blended into the surface. My thumb brushed it by mistake. There was a soft click. The red light turned yellow, and the device began emitting short beeps. Beep, beep, getting faster, more insistent, louder than the wind outside and the beating of my own heart. The sound crawled into my head, piercing the silence of the car. My hands lost their strength. I placed it with extreme care on the passenger seat, as if I had a live rattlesnake next to me, while my mind scrambled for a rational explanation. A GPS tracker? Some kind of medical alarm? Maybe an electronic car gadget I did not know about? Nothing fit. This was not something someone carries in a backpack by mistake. This was something you hide. And the person who had hidden it was the woman I trusted most to take care of my son, or worse, my own son. My chest tightened, as if my sternum were being crushed in a vice. I wanted to reject that thought, push it out of my head. No, Julian would not be capable. Not my boy. Not the kid I taught to drive, the one who cried the day his mother died. But the device kept beeping, the yellow light flashing faster. And I suddenly remembered that feeling of strange weight in the car, the vibration under my feet. I looked at the phone in the cup holder. I could call them, ask what that was, look for a logical explanation. let them reassure me, but something stopped me. It was not reason. It was something else. A cold instinct, hard to put into words, that settled in my stomach like a stone. A few miles back, I remembered seeing a sign for a state police barracks at the next exit. I wrapped the device in the same shirt that was in the bag, trying to muffle the beeps. I tucked it back in, zipped the bag with trembling hands, and started the car. This time I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. I did not pray out loud. I just listened to my breathing and that insistent beep muffled by the cloth. Instead of getting back on the highway, I turned around and took the exit to the barracks. I did not call Julian or Brianna. Pure instinct told me not to. I was driving toward the only people who might have answers and who might be the only ones I could still trust. 5 minutes later, I parked in front of the police building. It was a low brick construction with a flag at half-mast, barely moving in the cold. There were 3 cruisers parked there, covered in a thin layer of dust, as if they had not moved in weeks. I took the backpack, felt the weight of the device inside, a weight that was no longer just physical, but moral, and walked through the glass doors with shaky legs. Inside, the station was small and bleak. 3 metal desks, flickering fluorescent lights, the hum of a ceiling fan, and the stale smell of reheated coffee mixed with cheap disinfectant. A young officer behind the counter looked up when I walked in. His eyes immediately went to my hands gripping the bag and to my pale face. "Morning, sir. How can I help you?" he asked, though his tone already had a hint of alert. I placed the bag on the counter, opened it with clumsy fingers, and pulled out the device still wrapped in my shirt. The yellow light filtered through the fabric, and the beep, though muffled, was still sounding impatient. "I found this in my bag," I said, hearing my own voice, as if it belonged to someone else. "I do not know what it is, but it should not be there." The officer looked at it and went white, as if the blood had been drained from his face. "Sir, do not touch it," he whispered, stepping back. At that moment, a door at the back opened. A man in his mid-50s with graying hair, a neatly trimmed mustache, and a sharp gaze stepped out with a confident stride. He had an inspector's badge hanging from his belt, and the weariness of many years of seeing the worst in people marked in the bags under his eyes. His gaze went straight to the device on the counter, and his expression changed instantly. The relaxation vanished, replaced by a cold concentration. "Everyone back," he ordered, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. The young officer backed away immediately. The inspector, whose name tag read Kincaid, grabbed his radio with a firm hand. "Dispatch, this is Kincaid. I need the bomb squad at the barracks. Possible remote detonator. I repeat, possible detonator. Proceed with maximum urgency." The word hit me like a punch to the chest. Detonator. Suddenly, everything clicked with a clarity that was terrifying. The weird weight of the car, the vibration, the beeping, Brianna's call pushing me onto the highway. "Sir," Kincaid said, looking me in the eye with a seriousness that allowed no argument, "I need you to step outside with me without touching anything else. We are going to move away from the building for safety. Keep calm, all right?" I followed him to the parking lot, my legs feeling like jelly. The cold air hit my face, but I barely felt it. "What is your name?" he asked, as we moved a few yards away. Elias Van Cleef," I replied, swallowing hard. "I live on the outskirts of Charlotte." "Mr. Van Cleef, where did you get that device?" he insisted, already in interrogation mode. "From my backpack," I said. "I was on my way to Atlanta. My son is supposed to be in the hospital. My daughter-in-law packed the bag for me. I did not open it until I stopped to look for water. "Who has access to your vehicle?" he asked, never taking his eyes off me. "My son, Julian, and Brianna, his wife. They have keys to the house. We are close," I replied, almost automatically. "But they would not be capable. They are in Atlanta. Julian is hurt. Kincaid held up a hand to stop me. It was not a rough gesture, but it was final. "We will see about that," he said with a strange calm. "For now, I need you to stay calm and do not go near your car again. Understood?" I nodded, though I was anything but calm. 15 minutes later, a black van pulled into the lot with its sirens off, but urgency written in every movement. It was the bomb squad. 2 technicians in tactical gear climbed out, covered in thick vests, helmets, visors, and gloves, carrying gadgets and metal cases. They entered the station, examined the device, and spoke in low voices with Kincaid, using technical terms I could barely hear. After a few minutes, one of them came back out. "Inspector, we need to check the gentleman's car," he said, pointing toward the parking lot. My blue sedan was a few yards away. Quiet, innocent, as always. The team approached with extreme care, using mirrors on poles to look underneath, as if they were exploring the den of a dangerous animal. One of the technicians knelt down and slid a small camera under the driver's side. He went still, watching the screen. Then he gave a sign to Kincaid, one of those silent signs that say everything. "You have to see this," he murmured. Kincaid leaned over, watched the screen for a few seconds, and clenched his jaw. Then he turned to me with an expression that left no room for doubt. "Mr. Van Cleef, come here," he said. I walked over as best I could with heavy legs. The technician held the mirror at a specific angle under my seat. Bolted to the chassis, right under where I had been sitting, was a gray package wrapped in tape with wires and a small receiver blinking like a devil's eye. "C4," the technician said softly, as if naming it out loud might set it off. "A few pounds, enough to blow the car and anyone inside to smithereens." The world crumbled around me. Everything went blurry, distant, as if I were inside a dream I could not wake up from. I sat down on the concrete curb, my vision clouded. I felt my chest sinking, as if someone were squeezing it from the inside with both hands. Kincaid crouched beside me. "Mr. Van Cleef, who had access to your car?" he repeated slowly, as if he were talking to me through a fog. "My son," I whispered. "And Brianna. But no, they are family. They love me. I gave them everything." "Where are they right now?" he insisted. "In Atlanta, at the medical center," I replied. "Julian had an accident this morning. Brianna was the one who called. That is why I was going there." Kincaid's eyes sharpened like blades. "Mr. Van Cleef, I think we need to call that hospital right now," he said. He handed me his phone. Because my hands were shaking so much, I could not even get mine out. I dialed with numb fingers. A professional female voice answered. "Atlanta Medical Center, emergency room." "Good morning." "My son," I said, my voice cracking. "Julian Van Cleef. He was admitted this morning after a car crash. They said he was in critical condition." There was a short pause. "Let me check the admissions for a moment, please," the voice replied. The seconds stretched out like hours while I stared at my car from a distance, knowing that if I had not been thirsty, if I had not stopped, I would be a fireball in the middle of the interstate right now. "Sir, I am sorry," the voice said when she returned. "We have no patient by that name, and no admission today matching that description." The phone slipped from my hand and hit the ground. I felt like my stomach had been ripped out. Kincaid picked it up, finished the call with 2 brief sentences, and sat down next to me on the curb. "Mr. Van Cleef," he said quietly, without beating around the bush. I think someone wanted you to disappear. And I think deep down, you already know who. I could not speak or breathe. Julian was not in the hospital. There had never been an accident, which meant it was all a lie. The desperate call, Brianna's panic, the trembling tone asking me to hurry. It was all a carefully designed trap to get me alone on the road, driving fast, desperate, straight to my end. My son, the boy I raised alone after his mother died, had allowed a device to be placed under my seat. His wife had put the detonator in my bag. They wanted to wipe me off the map, and they almost succeeded. An hour later, I was sitting in Kincaid's cramped office. It smelled like old coffee, damp paper, and something I could not name. Maybe accumulated exhaustion and frustration. The walls were covered with dented metal filing cabinets, and the desk was nearly buried under piles of files, photo, notes, and open folders. A single window let in the pale December light, filtered through some half-crooked blinds. Kincaid sat across from me, offered me water, a chair, silence, and time to stop shaking. I accepted everything except the silence, because inside my head, there was a storm. After a while, when I could finally hold the glass without spilling it, he slid a manila folder toward me. "You need to see this," he said with a calm that hurt more than any scream. I opened it. The first page was a bank statement in my son's name. Red numbers everywhere. Debts, overdrafts, accumulated interest. "Your boy owes $500,000, Kincaid explained, pointing to the figures. Crypto investments that went south, credit cards, payday loans, online gambling. He has been drowning for years, just kicking the can down the road." I stared at the number, 500,000. I had to blink several times to make sure I was reading it right. How had I not known anything? I thought I knew everything about my son's life. Kincaid pulled out another document. "A month ago, a life insurance policy was activated in your name," he continued. $2 million. Beneficiary, Julian Van Cleef. My hands went numb, as if the blood had decided to leave my fingers. "I did not sign that," I stammered. "I have never taken out anything like that." "We know," he replied. "Handwriting experts have already compared the signature. It is a forgery. It is Brianna's handwriting." He placed another photo in front of me. Brianna, smiling in a picture taken from her social media, impeccable, with makeup, with that air of a woman who knows exactly what she wants. "We also tracked her online history," he added. "She searched for remote detonation systems, dark web forums, downloaded instruction manuals. She planned everything, Mr. Van Cleef. Every detail. Your son is not the brains here. He is the weak piece she knew how to move." The office felt small, unbreathable. My head hurt, my chest, my back, even my memories. "But Julian," I tried to protest, clinging to any version of reality where he was not part of it. "Your son is buried in debt," Kincaid said without cruelty. "Just stating facts. He is not a movie monster. He is a weak and desperate man. And weak, desperate people do unthinkable things when someone smart and ruthless promises them an easy way out. She offered him that way out, and he took it." I thought of Julian as a child, learning to ride a bike, pedaling clumsily while I ran alongside him so he would not fall. I saw him asking me for help with math homework, crossing the stage on his graduation day with that mix of pride and embarrassment when I hugged him in front of everyone. I had raised him alone after his mother left us due to an illness that completely tore us apart. I gave him everything: a home, money, education, love, and this was how he paid me back. I gave them everything, I whispered, my voice broken. "The house, the money,
the business when I sold it. I raised him by myself when she died. And this is what I get in return. The tears came, without permission, hot, humiliating. I covered my face with my hands and sobbed like I had not since I was a young man, and they gave me the news that my wife would not make it out of the operating room. Kincaid stayed silent, letting me vent. He did not try to comfort me with cliches. He just waited. When I calmed down a bit, he spoke again. "We can arrest them right now," he said. "Attempted murder, fraud, forgery of official documents. With what we have, a judge would sign the warrants." I looked at him with bloodshot eyes, searching for hope somewhere. "And then what?" I asked. "Then they will hire lawyers," he explained with total frankness. "They will claim it was an accident, that the device malfunctioned, that someone manipulated them. They will say Brianna only signed and where she was told, that Julian knew nothing about explosives. They will make it look like you are confused. An old man being manipulated by the police. In 5, maybe 7 years, they could be out on the street with part of the money if some judge makes a mistake." It hurt to hear the word, old man. But I knew that legally, that was what many saw, an elderly, vulnerable man. "Or?" I asked, because I knew a mind like Kincaid's did not present a problem, without having another option up his sleeve. Kincaid leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Or we make them believe they succeeded," he said in a low voice. "We let them try to collect the insurance. We catch them in the act with evidence no one can dispute. No room for interpretation. No alternative narrative. Just facts, videos, signatures, recordings. Something no lawyer can tear down." I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, feeling that the answer was going to change my life forever. Kincaid's expression barely changed, but I saw a glint in his eyes, as if he had been waiting for that question since the moment he saw the device in my bag. "Disappear," he said. I looked at the folder. The debts, the policy, the forged signature, Brianna's smile in the photo, Julian's bank movements. They wanted me not to exist, so that was exactly what we were going to give them, but on our terms. "Explain the plan to me," I replied, swallowing hard. Kincaid nodded. "We faked your death," he said bluntly. "We make it believable, clean, documented. An accident? A tragedy on the interstate. Your car exploded. Your body was left unrecognizable. They will play their part as the grieving family. They will cry in front of the neighbors, organize a wake, attend the identification of the remains, and when they walk through the doors of the insurance company, when they smile inside and sign the papers to collect the policy, we will be waiting for them with all of this." He tapped the folder. "And with something else." I leaned back in the chair, feeling like I was sinking into it. My son. My blood. But he was no longer my boy. He was a stranger who had sat at my table, who had hugged me the day before, who had told me, "Drive carefully, Pops," knowing he was sending me to the slaughterhouse. "Do it," I said at last, my voice dry. Kincaid stood up and offered me his hand. I shook it. In that handshake, Elias Van Cleef ceased to exist for the world. At 5 in the afternoon, we were in an abandoned limestone quarry several miles outside the city. It was the kind of place people forget exists. Rocky walls on 3 sides, a gravel plain in the center, and dirt roads that led to nowhere. The echo returned every sound with strange force, as if the earth itself were listening. The sun was already down, casting long stretched shadow over that deserted space. My blue car sat alone in the middle of the clearing, a mechanical ghost about to turn to ash. I was behind a concrete wall about 200 yards away, alongside Kincaid and the bomb squad. Behind us, the technicians worked in silence. They had brought the car on a tow truck from the station. Now, they were preparing it to become my symbolic casket. A technician put a crash test dummy in the driver's seat dressed in clothes similar to mine to simulate a body. Another placed my wallet and one of my shoes near the area where the twisted chassis would remain, objects that would survive the fire and serve to identify the victim. They took photos, measured angles, checked cameras that would record everything for the official report. I watched every movement with an empty chest, as if I were watching a scene from a movie about another man. "Mr. Van Cleef," the head of the bomb squad shouted from the other side of the wall, "you might want to look away when we detonate." I shook my head. "I do not need to look away," I replied. If I was going to die, I wanted to witness my own death. He did not argue. They finished preparing the scene and joined us behind the wall. One held a remote detonator, another carried an extinguisher, and a third held a high-definition camera to record the blast. "Are you sure you are ready?" Kincaid whispered, never taking his eyes off the car. I was not, but I said, "Go ahead." The chief spoke into his radio with professional calm. "All personnel clear of the area. Detonation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He pressed the button. The explosion shook the quarry like thunder. First came the light. A massive fireball erupted under the car, orange and red, with a thick column of black smoke rising toward the sky, staining it. The sedan lifted a few inches, flipped, and fell as a mass of burning metal that creaked as it twisted. The sound bounced off the rocks, brutal, absolute, filling everything. I felt the shockwave in my chest, in my teeth, in my bones. I could not look away. That was supposed to be me, burned, erased, reduced to a police report and a couple of charred objects. My knees failed me for a second. Kincaid put a firm hand on my shoulder, anchoring me to reality. "Are you okay?" he asked. I did not know if I would ever be okay again. Firefighters approached with hoses, spraying white foam over the remains. The flames subsided little by little, revealing a black skeleton of steel and melted plastic. The air smelled of rubber, burned gasoline, and death. "I do not know who I am now," I murmured, more to myself than to him. 2 hours later, I was no longer the man who left his house that morning, thinking he was going to the hospital. I was officially dead, with a first and last name. I was in a safe house on the other side of town, a small apartment with simple furniture, beige walls, a single window overlooking a random parking lot, and a patch of unimportant sky. The kind of place where no one looks twice. Kincaid took me there, gave me a key and a new phone. He ordered me to stay inside, turn off my personal cell phone, and let the world believe I was dead. He turned on the television and found the local news. It did not take long to appear. The anchor, with a solemn expression, spoke, while behind her an image of my car was seen burning in pieces by the side of the highway. "Breaking news," she said, looking at the camera. "Elias Van Cleef, 62, a retired businessman from the Charlotte area, died this afternoon in a vehicle explosion on the interstate toward Atlanta. Authorities are investigating the causes, but early reports point to a possible mechanical failure. He was traveling alone at the time of the incident. He is survived by his son and daughter-in-law." Next, my photo appeared on the screen, one from 5 years ago, smiling with more hair and fewer wrinkles. Below, in white letters on a black background, "In loving memory,
1962 to 2024. I stood there staring at my own face, my name, my dates, my official end. It did not seem real. It was like looking at someone else's obituary. Kincaid lowered the volume with the remote. "Now we wait," he said, "and we watch." "How long?" I asked, never taking my eyes off my frozen photo on the screen. "Not long," he replied. "They will see the news. They will have to react. They will play their part as the devastated family. They will answer calls, receive condolences, and when they think it is safe, they will go for the insurance money. What people really are is seen when they smell money." I looked back at the screen. My photo was still there. In loving memory, I was a ghost in life, watching my own death, waiting for my son and daughter-in-law to sit at the table where they planned to divide the price of my head. That same night, at 8, I was still in the safe house. Kincaid had turned the living room into a small surveillance center. 3 monitors lit up the darkness. On one, you could see the cold hallway of the hospital morgue, where they would take the charred body that was supposedly me. On another, the room where they show bodies to relatives for identification. On the third, the interior of my own house, thanks to the hidden cameras his team had installed hours earlier in places I had pointed out on a floor plan. I saw Julian enter the identification room, his face red and his eyes swollen from crying so much, or from pretending he had cried. Brianna walked beside him with a hand on his shoulder, the perfect posture of a supportive, devastated wife. She was dressed in black, her hair pulled back with no apparent makeup, the exact portrait of mourning. The medical examiner led them to a gurney covered with a white sheet. Underneath was a charred body that was not mine, but a John Doe, whom the system had already forgotten, and who now served to complete our plan. Kincaid had arranged everything. The coroner lifted the sheet just enough to show the unrecognizable face. Julian looked and turned away immediately, bringing his hand to his mouth. His shoulders were shaking. It is my dad," he whispered, his voice cracking. Brianna stepped forward. She looked at the body for a few seconds without blinking. Her face did not change. Not a flinch, not a gesture. Just an almost unsettling calm. She placed her hand on the sheet delicately, as if she were truly stroking a beloved deceased person. "Yes," she said softly. "It is Elias." Julian collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Brianna knelt beside him, hugged him, whispering something in his ear that the microphone did not catch. From the safe house, I watched them with a heart in tatters, even though I knew it was all theater. I did not know how much of that crying was guilt, how much was fear, how much was the habit of a son who believes everything will be forgiven. "That is your son," Kincaid commented beside me in a low voice, without judgment, just describing. I did not answer. I could not. I just clenched my fists on my knees until my knuckles went wide. An hour later, they were already back at my house. Kincaid's team had placed cameras in the living room, the kitchen, the garage, and even the master bedroom. We saw everything in real time. Julian walked in first, threw his coat on the couch with a rough gesture. Brianna closed the door behind him carefully, turning the key. For a few seconds, no one moved. The silence inside the house seemed like another character. Then she let out her breath as if she had been holding it for hours. "It is done," she said, letting her shoulders drop. Julian turned to her. His face was no longer red,
There were no tears left. Just exhaustion and something else, that dull look of someone who crossed a line there is no turning back from. "Are you sure the policy is okay?" he asked, his voice tense, almost childlike. Brianna smiled, a smile with no warmth, sharp, professional. "Millions of dollars, baby," she replied. "Perfectly valid. Everything is in order. Everything checked. We just have to wait for them to close the investigation. Then we file the claim. We sign, and that is it." Julian flopped onto the couch and rubbed his face with both hands. What if they find out? What if... They are not going to find out. Brianna interrupted in a tone that allowed no reply. "The car no longer exists. Neither does he. There are no witnesses or loose ends. No one knows about the policy except us. And the policy was made legally, well, almost." She went to the bar, poured 2 generous glasses of whiskey, and handed him one. She raised hers. "To us," she said. Julian hesitated, looked at the amber liquid, then looked at her. In the end, he clinked his glass with Brianna's. "To us," he repeated, though his voice sounded more like a question than a toast. I watched them drink, smile, relax little by little, even laugh at something we did not hear. I felt something freeze, permanently inside me. The child I raised would not have been able to toast over my symbolic grave, but that man I saw on the screen was doing it. Kincaid glanced at me. "How are you doing?" he asked. I was not okay, but I nodded. The hardest part was yet to come, the part that no judge would see, but that would break what was left of Julian's sanity and Brianna's arrogance. At 11 at night, when the house was already silent and the lights were off, what we had prepared happened. They were sleeping upstairs. Suddenly, from the living room, music started playing, a soft piano melody I knew all too well. It was Bésame Mucho, my wife's favorite bolero, the same song that played the night I proposed to her, and the same one she played on the old radio in the living room on Sundays while she cooked. That radio had not been used for months. I had unplugged it myself. Julian appeared at the top of the stairs, disheveled in his pajamas, frowning. "You put the radio on," he shouted toward the bedroom. Brianna came out wrapped in a satin robe. "I thought it was you," she answered, annoyed. They went down together slowly, as if they feared finding someone sitting on the couch. The music kept playing from the old radio in the living room, the same one that had sat for years on the cabinet by the fireplace. Julian stared at it, with his jaw clenched. "I turned it off and unplugged it the other day," he murmured. "That thing shouldn't even turn on." "Well, turn it off again," Brianna replied, trying to sound calm, though the tension in her voice was obvious. He pressed the button, turned the volume knob, unplugged the cord. The music cut off instantly. A thick silence filled the room, the kind of silence that weighs more than any noise. They stood still, not speaking, looking at the device as if they expected it to turn on again by itself. Brianna let out a nervous chuckle. "Old house? Old wires? Weird things," she said. "It is nothing, Julian." He did not look convinced. He looked around, at the family photos on the wall, at the couch where I sat so many times to watch games with him. "Yeah, must be that," he replied. But his voice was shaking. In the safe house, Kincaid leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed and a professional, joyless half-smile. "This is just beginning," he commented. I watched the screen in silence, seeing my son in my living room. Scared, confused. We had sown doubt, fear, the question, what if he isn't really dead? The next day, we would raise the stakes. The following night, Sunday, Julian went to bed earlier than usual. Brianna followed him an hour later. They did not know that Kincaid's team had entered the house while they were out, arranging details with pinpoint accuracy. From the main house, we saw the signal from the bedroom camera. Julian crawled under the covers, turned off the light, settled his head on the pillow, and went rigid. He felt something hard at the base of his neck. He sat up slowly, turned on the lamp, and reached under the pillow. His fingers touched something cold, metallic. He pulled out an object he recognized instantly. The detonator. The same black device he had put in my bag a few hours before the supposed trip to the hospital. The yellow light was blinking slow and steady, as if marking the rhythm of his guilt. On the bottom of the menu was a handwritten note in my handwriting, the kind he knew from notes on the fridge. "Did you forget to turn this off, son?" "Pops." Julian let out a scream that chilled the blood, even through the screen. He threw the device across the room as if it were burning. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "No, no, no," he repeated, out of his mind, his breathing out of control. Brianna burst into the room, her eyes wide. "What is wrong? What is that?" she asked, looking around. Julian pointed at the floor, his hand shaking. How? How is it here?" "It was supposed to have exploded with him. It was supposed to be with him in the car. I put it there." He covered his mouth, as if he had just realized what he had confessed out loud. Brianna looked at the device, went colorless, took 2 steps back. "Someone is mocking us," she whispered. "Someone was here." "It is him," Julian screamed. "He is not dead. He knows that. Brianna slapped him hard across the face. A dry crack I could almost feel from the screen. "Shut up," she spat. "Get a hold of yourself. He is dead. We saw him in the morgue, remember? We saw what was left of him. Do not start with this nonsense." Julian slumped onto the bed, covering his face with his hands. His whole body was shaking. "Then who did this?" he whispered. "Who came in here? Who knows everything?" Brianna exhaled slowly, sat next to him, but her voice sounded icy, calculating. "I do not know," she said, "but in 3 days, we collect the money. Just 3 more days. Hang on, okay? After that, we can get out of here, start somewhere else, make a new life. 3 days, Julian." Julian nodded, but his eyes were empty, lost somewhere in the floor. On the monitor, we saw him curl up, rocking slightly like a scared child. And then I heard it. Very soft, hardly more than a murmur caught by the camera's microphone. "Forgive me, Pops. Forgive me. Forgive me." I closed my eyes and felt something break inside me for the second time. I did not know if the attempted murder hurt me more, or that desperate plea recorded in a room where I no longer existed. At least, not to them. Kincaid said nothing. He just handed me a handkerchief. 3 days later, on Thursday, December 21st, they were to go to the insurance company. They did not know we were waiting for them on the 40th floor of a glass skyscraper, where the truth was going to blow up in their faces louder than any explosive. That Thursday morning, the insurance company offices occupied the top floor of an elegant building in the city's financial district, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing avenues full of cars and busy people unaware of the tragedy. The shiny wooden desks, leather armchairs, well-tended plants, and walls with diplomas created an atmosphere of cold professionalism. 3 men in suits were waiting for them in a spacious boardroom with a long table and a giant screen at the back. It was the perfect stage for settling scores.
Julian and Brianna arrived dressed in black, sober, with their mourning perfectly studied. Brianna was the first to shake the hand of the insurance director. "Thank you for receiving us at such a difficult time," she said, her voice perfectly modulated. Not too broken, not too firm. The exact tone someone truly in mourning would use. The director, a man with gray hair and a weary face, nodded, accustomed to seeing pain and also seeing falsehood. "Our deepest condolences," he replied. "Please, take a seat." They settled in. Brianna interlaced her hands on the table, her nails perfectly manicured. Julian's leg was moving non-stop under the desk. From where I was, behind polarized glass in an adjacent room, I could see everything through a monitor, and also live thanks to a one-way mirror. His knee hit the furniture over and over, marking the rhythm of his nervousness. The director slid a pile of papers toward them. "Before we proceed with the payment of the policy," he explained, "we have a protocol. We review the timeline of the incident, the documentation submitted, and some security elements, especially on high-value policies like your father's." Julian nodded quickly. "Almost too much." "Of course, whatever you need," he said, trying to sound helpful. The director took a remote control and pressed a button. Behind him, a large screen descended from the ceiling. The lights dimmed slightly. "These images," he said calmly, "were obtained from the security system of Mr. Van Cleef's house." The screen came to life. It was my garage. Early Saturday morning at 2:17, according to the timestamp in the corner. The camera placed near the ceiling showed the entire space with uncomfortable clarity. My blue car in the center, boxes stacked in a corner, tools hanging on the wall. Suddenly, two figures appeared. Julian and Brianna, moving carefully, like someone who knows they are doing something they shouldn't. Julian knelt by the car, opened the driver's door, and slid underneath with a flashlight in his mouth. His hands worked quickly, fixing a black package under the seat. The voice of one of the technicians in the recording explained in a voiceover, "C4 plastic explosive, sufficient to destroy the vehicle and cause the death of the occupant." Brianna, beside him, held the detonator, showing it to the camera without knowing it, placing it inside a backpack on the workbench, the same backpack I would carry on the passenger seat. She zipped it and left it by the door leading to the house. Everything clear, sharp, indisputable. Julian's face went to ash. He started sweating, blinking fast, looking around, searching for some explanation. Brianna stood up suddenly as if driven by a spring. That is fake," she screamed. "It is edited. It is a digital setup. One of those deepfakes they make now." The director didn't even blink. "This material comes from the cameras your father-in-law installed in the garage 2 weeks before his accident," he explained. "It is dated, stored in the cloud, and certified by digital experts. It is fully valid in a court of law." "He didn't have cameras in the garage," Brianna protested, looking at the director as if she could intimidate him. A voice sounded from the door, calm, firm, with a tone Julian had known since he was a child. "Actually, I did." Julian turned his head, petrified at the sight of me walking in. I was wearing a gray suit Kincaid had lent me, a little wide in the shoulders, but enough for the occasion. Alive, standing, breathing. "No, no, no, no," Julian stammered, collapsing back into the chair. "It cannot be." He tried to cover his face as if closing his eyes could erase the image, but the tears were already running. Brianna turned toward the door, looking for a physical exit from the room, or maybe a mental exit from the situation. Inspector Kincaid stepped forward, blocking the door. Behind him, 2 uniformed officers entered. "Brianna," Julian started, but the words choked him. "Brianna Van Cleef," Kincaid said in a neutral tone, pulling out a folded sheet. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, aggravated fraud, and forgery of official documents." One of the officers stepped forward with handcuffs. Brianna backed away, her eyes wild. "It was him," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Julian. "He planned it all. I didn't know anything. He deceived me. He manipulated me." Julian raised his head, tears sliding down his face, his features distorted by fear. "Liar," he sobbed. "It was your idea. You researched everything. You convinced me. You said we would be free, that it was just a plan, that no one would get hurt." "No one would get hurt?" I intervened, unable to contain myself. "Do you think blowing up your father in a car is a plan where no one gets hurt, Julian?" Brianna's face twisted with rage. "You are pathetic," she spat at him. "Weak, just like your father always said. You didn't even last 3 days without breaking." The officer grabbed her wrists and put the handcuffs on. She struggled but could not get loose. "You are going to rot for this," she screamed at Julian as they led her out of the room. "You are going to rot alone." They took her down the hallway, still screaming. Her voice faded as she moved away. I walked slowly toward my son. I stopped a few paces away. Julian looked up, eyes red, face destroyed. For a second, I saw the little boy who used to grab my hand to cross the street. That second vanished as quickly as it had come. "Pops, I am sorry," he said. She made me. I was desperate. I didn't want to do it for real. I swear I didn't. Just. My voice was ice. "You kissed me on the cheek. You told me, drive carefully. You called me Pops, and then you sent me to die." I replied, "Do not disrespect me now with empty apologies. There is no obligation that justifies what you did. You had opportunities to stop this over and over. You didn't." An officer approached, looking at Kincaid. "Sir, we have to take him," he said. I nodded and stepped back. They put the handcuffs on Julian. He didn't resist, he just kept repeating through sobs, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." They took him out of the room. His voice echoed in the hallway until the elevator doors closed. I stood in the middle of that impeccable office, looking at the gap where they had taken both of them. Kincaid approached slowly. "Are you all right?" he asked. Without looking away, I replied, "No, but it is over." They were taken away in handcuffs toward cells that would be their home for years, maybe decades. Justice had been set in motion, but the pain and betrayal do not disappear with a sentence. They stay, they hurt, they pulse within you. 6 months later, in June, the courtroom in the city center was packed. Reporters, cameras, onlookers, law students, everyone wanted to see the son and daughter-in-law who had tried to erase a father for money. The case had become famous. Some called it the Ghost Father case. I sat in the back row, in silence, with a cap and glasses to go unnoticed, watching. Kincaid testified first. He explained step by step how the detonator was discovered, how the explosive was found under my seat, how the decision was made to fake my death. They projected the garage images over and over, those from the hospital, those from my house. Each one was another blow against the version of innocence that the defense lawyers were trying to build. The prosecutor called Brianna the mastermind, the person who had forged my signature on the policy, the one who had researched remote detonation systems, the one who had calculated every step with coldness. Of Julian, he said he was weak, desperate, but an accomplice. He did not mince words. Without him, the plan did not exist. Without her, he would not have had the courage to try. Julian's defense lawyer tried to argue that he had been pressured, that he acted under coercion and out of fear, that he was cornered by debts, that Brianna manipulated him emotionally, that she threatened to leave him if he didn't go through with the plan. There were witnesses who spoke of Brianna's dominant personality, her ability to convince, her comments about the old man and the money. All true, but the judge was clear. Desperation does not justify a conspiracy to kill your own father, she sentenced, looking Julian in the eye. Emotional manipulation does not erase responsibility. You had multiple opportunities to stop this, and you never did. Brianna received life in prison without the possibility of parole. She smiled coldly when they read the sentence, as if she refused to let a court take away her pride. To her, losing freedom seemed less serious than admitting her plan had failed. Julian received 25 years. He cried. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, not relief. Just a bitter certainty. The son I loved, if he existed, was buried under layers of debt, cowardly decisions, and a wife who had seen in me a number with many zeros. Not a father-in-law. Today, I live in a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts, with simple furniture bought second-hand, no garage, and no expensive car. I sold the big house with its manicured garden and its spacious garage. And I donated most of the money to organizations that help young people in debt and widows with children. People who truly need an out that doesn't involve crime. I kept just enough to live peacefully, without luxury, without excess. 3 mornings a week, I volunteer at a senior center. I read aloud to those who can no longer see well. I bring them coffee, listen to their stories, and keep them company when they feel lonely. Sometimes, when we finish reading, they tell me their own family betrayals, their disappointments, their guilts. I am not the only father who has felt that his blood stabbed him in the back. That somehow makes me feel less strange and more human. In the afternoons, I sit on the balcony and watch the sun go down behind the low buildings and a gray river in the distance. I listen to the sound of children playing in the street vendors, dogs barking. I think about what I lost and what I saved. I lost my son, at least the son I thought I had. But I saved something more important, my soul and my conscience. I saved the possibility of looking in the mirror without lying to myself. Money corrupts. Greed is poison. And trust, when it breaks that way, never comes back as it was before. Julian writes me letters from prison. Some are long, others are barely 2 lines. He asks for forgiveness, tells me which prison workshops he works in, tells me about a pastor he met there, tells me he has changed. I do not open them. I keep them in a shoebox all together, the way you keep photos that hurt. Maybe one day I will read them. Today, I cannot. Brianna finally understood what it means to lose everything. Beauty, freedom, control. She ages in a cold cell, alone, forgotten by the same friends who used to surround her for her parties and her perfect photos. Once, her profile appeared in a newspaper in black and white under the headline, "The Daughter-in-Law Who Wanted to Blow Up the Father-in-Law." After that, the world forgot her. And I, who died on a highway, am still here. I am not rich. I am not surrounded by family. I do not have a brilliant surname in business magazines. But I am alive, truly alive. And that is worth more than $2 million. Today, I value things I used to overlook. A rainy afternoon with a good book, a sincere conversation, the laughter of an old man when a bad joke reminds him of his youth. I get up from the balcony, go into the kitchen, and start preparing a simple dinner: pasta, sautéed vegetables, a cup of tea. I hum softly, a song my wife used to sing in the kitchen on those quiet Sundays. Bésame mucho, the same one I used to scare my own son and make him feel for an instant that the dead can also settle scores. I smile slightly with that mix of nostalgia and peace that only someone who has lost almost everything and still stands understands. I am Elias Van Cleef. I am 62 years old. I am a retired businessman, and I am the man whose own son tried to erase him for $2 million. This is my real story, without unnecessary fluff, without exaggeration. And it is one of those grandfather stories you need to hear, because the lesson might save your life. If there is anything I want you to take away from all this, it is this: do not be like me. I trusted blindly. I gave my son everything: money, a roof, second chances, even when the signs were right there screaming in my face. I ignored the excessive spending, the new credit cards that appeared out of nowhere, the air of everything is owed to me, the coldness in Brianna's eyes when she talked about inheritance and a secured future. God sent me warnings in the form of small discomforts, but I covered them with affection and excuses. I thought love could cure greed. It cannot. Greed is a poison that corrodes from within. And when you feed it, when you hand over wealth without teaching responsibility, when you confuse love with blank checks, you are not helping your children. You are destroying them. You are teaching them that their value is in what they receive, not in what they are capable of building with their own hands. I believe God left me alive for a reason. To tell this story so that someone on the other side of the screen opens their eyes before it is too late. Do not build your legacy only on money. Build on values, on faith, on the idea that no inheritance or policy is worth more than integrity. You do not owe your children millions. You owe them healthy boundaries and example, and truth, even if it hurts. This real story is a warning, one of those grandfather stories told so that those who come after do not repeat the same mistakes. If this touched your heart, tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what lesson you take away. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, with that friend who is blinded by money, or with that parent who believes that loving is giving and giving without asking for responsibility in return. And if you want more real stories like this, subscribe, because wisdom is not just learned, it is shared. May God bless you. Guard your heart and remember, trust in God, but protect very well who you give your trust to and how far you are willing to close your eyes out of love. Sometimes opening them in time is the difference between living to tell about it or becoming just another name in an obituary.